It started with a pattern so subtle that no one noticed it at first. A woman traveling alone.
Need some help?
Yes, I'd really appreciate it.
And then, she was gone. No witnesses, no screams, no signs of struggle, just an empty road, and a vehicle left behind like a silent clue. But what if I told you this wasn't just one case? Not two, but possibly a series of connected disappearances stretching across multiple states in America. A chilling pattern that investigators would later call the flat tire murders. And what makes this case truly terrifying, it's the brutality, it's the method, the precision, and the possibility that the killer may have been watching his victims long before they even realized they were in danger. So stay with me, because as we go deeper into this story, you'll start to see how every small detail connects, and by the end, you might realize that this wasn't random at all, and this was someone who knew exactly what they were doing, someone who turned ordinary
roadside moments into deadly traps. It all began in the early 1990s, when reports started surfacing
of women being found murdered near highways, often in isolated areas where help was far away and visibility was low. The victims didn't know each other. They came from different backgrounds, different cities, different lives. But there was one thing that connected them, something investigators initially overlooked. Many of these women had experienced. They all had car trouble, flat tires, disabled vehicles, situations that forced them to stop shortly before they were killed, to step out, to become vulnerable, and that's where the killer would strike. Imagine this. You're driving late at night.
Maybe tired, maybe distracted, and suddenly your car begins to wobble, and you pull over, step out, and realize your tire is flat.
Before panic sets in.
I'm here to help.
Thank you. You're thinking about getting back on the road, but what if that person wasn't there to help? What if they were the reason your car stopped in the first place? This is the theory that would later haunt investigators, and that the killer was deliberately disabling vehicles, creating opportunities, setting traps that looked like accidents. And once the victim was isolated, the outcome was almost always the same. They were attacked, murdered, and left behind, often in places where discovery would take time. And time, in cases like these, means lost evidence, lost leads. We lost chances to catch whoever was responsible. As more cases surfaced, the similarities became harder to ignore.
The locations varied, different states, different highways, but the method remained eerily consistent.
And then disappearance followed by discovery. And yet, despite the pattern, no suspect was ever identified. No arrests were made. No clear evidence pointed to a single individual. It was as if the killer understood not just how to commit the crime, but how to avoid being seen, how to erase their presence, how to vanish just as quickly as they appeared. And this is where things take an even darker turn, because some investigators began to believe that this wasn't just one killer, but possibly multiple individuals using a similar method. Or even worse, someone who had been operating for years without ever being connected to all the cases. Think about that for a moment. How many times have people experienced car trouble on a deserted road? How many times has a stranger stopped to help? And how many of those moments were completely harmless? But in these cases, that moment of vulnerability became the beginning of something far more sinister. And as the timeline expanded, so did the questions. Were these crimes coordinated? Was there a network? Or was it a single individual moving across states, adapting, evolving, staying one step ahead of law enforcement? And if it was one person, how did they manage to avoid detection for so long? Because in most serial cases, patterns lead to capture, mistakes lead to exposure, but here, there were no clear mistakes, no defining errors, just a trail of victims and a growing sense that something wasn't right. One of the most unsettling aspects, the most haunting detail is how ordinary it is. No dramatic break-in, no loud confrontation.
No obvious sign of danger until it's too late. Just a simple, everyday problem that anyone could face, a flat tire.
And that's what makes it so terrifying, because it removes the sense of control. It turns a routine situation into a potential threat, and it makes you wonder how many other cases might be connected but never linked. How many stories were dismissed as isolated incidents when they were actually part of something larger? Witnesses in some cases reported seeing suspicious individuals near the scenes, people lingering, watching, waiting. The descriptions were vague, inconsistent, not enough to build a solid profile, and without forensic evidence. Tying the cases together, investigators were left with theories rather than answers, but the theory of a calculated predator. Using vehicle sabotage as a method remains one of the most chilling possibilities, because it suggests planning, patience, and a deep understanding of human behavior. The killer didn't rely on chance, they created it. They engineered situations where victims would be alone, vulnerable, and more likely to trust the first person who offered help. And that psychological element, the manipulation of trust, is what elevates this case from disturbing to truly horrifying, because it means the victims weren't just targeted physically, they were targeted mentally, placed in situations where their natural instincts to accept help could be used against them. As time passed, the cases grew colder, the leads dried up, evidence degraded, and the possibility of solving them became more distant. But the questions never went away. Who was behind these crimes? How many victims were there? And most importantly, could it still be happening? Because without a confirmed suspect, without a clear resolution, there's always that lingering uncertainty, that unsettling thought that whoever was responsible may have never been caught, may have simply stopped, or changed methods, or moved on to something else entirely. And that brings us to the theories. The first being that this was indeed a single serial killer, someone highly organized, methodical, capable of operating across jurisdictions without leaving enough evidence to be tracked. The second theory suggests multiple offenders, individuals who independently used similar tactics. You think it's creating a pattern that appears connected, but isn't. And the third, perhaps the most unsettling, is that these cases represent only a fraction of a much larger, hidden pattern, crimes that were never linked, never recognized as part of something bigger, lost in the gaps between jurisdictions and investigations. And as disturbing as these theories are, none of them provide closure. None of them answer the fundamental question of who was responsible and why. Because at the center of this mystery is not just a method, but a mind. I found the one who understood vulnerability, who knew how to exploit it, and who left just enough evidence behind to suggest a pattern, but not enough to reveal their identity. And so we're left with a story that feels incomplete. A case that exists in fragments, in reports, in theories, in unanswered questions. And perhaps the most chilling part
of all is this. The next time you see a car pulled over on a quiet road,
someone stops to help, you might wonder, just for a moment, whether it's truly an act of kindness or something far more dangerous. Because in the world of the flat tire murders, the line between help and harm, the line was blurred, and once you crossed it, there was no turning back. Even today, as highways stretch endlessly, was blurred, and once you crossed it, there was no turning back. And even today, as highways stretch endlessly, hidden in the ordinary, the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered, and until it is, I won't stop. This case will continue to linger in the shadows, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying threats, the ones that appear when we least expect them, disguised as help, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.